Dan Trachtenberg's Prey did wonders of critics and fans alike. No wonder he was pretty much given the reins to the future of the Predator franchise. We all knew that Predator Badlands was set to release in November of this year, but before that, we will get an anthology of 3 Predator stories in animated format on June 5th, 2025. Whether you watch this video before or after that, rest assured you won't regret it, because in here, we're going to explore the entire timeline of the Predator franchise. It'll also help you with Prey, and you can have more than a half hour of Predator lore if you just sit back and enjoy. Oh, and before we begin, please consider hitting those like and subscribe buttons because those 2 small clicks from you will help us tremendously in bringing you more of these marvelous videos. So now, let us begin. So, as it happens, Predator Killer of Killers is actually divided into 3 different stories, and in each of them, a warrior fights a predator. The first of these is about a Viking raider guiding her young son on a bloody quest for revenge, which means chronologically, Predator Killer of Killers, Viking chapter, should be at the top of the list. The next would be Predator Killer of Killers, Samurai chapter, in which a ninja in feudal Japan turns against his samurai brother in a brutal battle for succession. Now, here's where our recap begins, because if the timeline is to be considered, it starts with Dan Trachtenberg's Prey. We'll let you know when the 3rd chapter of Killer of Killers arrives on the list, but first, let's explore Prey 2022, set in the year 1719. So you may very well remember that Prey was set in the wide stretches of the Great Plains in 1719. What's really fascinating about the movie is that it brought a predator into the Comanche territory where tradition, survival, and the Killer of Killers came together to duke it out. Predators are known to have a very tribal way of living despite their advanced tech, and a Comanche warrior versus a predator felt like a match made in heaven. The story is essentially about Naru, a young Comanche woman who trains as a healer but wants to become a hunter. Specifically one as skilled as her brother, Tabe. She's not interested in sitting on the sidelines with herbs and rituals, she wants in on the real fight. While tracking deer with her dog Sari, Naru spots strange lights streaking through the sky. She takes it as a thunderbird, a spiritual sign that she's ready to become a hunter. But unlike her, we know the reality. We know that those lights come from a predator's dropship making landfall. Meanwhile, a tribe member named Puhi gets dragged off by a cougar. Naru joins the search party and tends to Puhi's wounds with a plant called orange totsia, which lowers body temperature and slows bleeding. After this, she returns home while Tabe stays behind to finish the job. Later, however, Naru finds a skinned rattlesnake and tracks too big and strange to be from any local predator, including the huge grizzlies that roam the area. She goes with Pake and meets Tabe. Together, the 3 set up a trap for the cougar. However, the plan fails and Pake dies, and Naru faces the beast head-on. Right as she locks eyes with it, a deafening roar and flashing lights throw her off. She wakes up back in the village, having been carried home by Tabe, who later returns with the cougar's body and is named Warchi. Still convinced there's something worse lurking in the woods, Naru heads out with Sari. She sinks into a bog pit but manages to pull herself out, only to be attacked by a grizzly. The bear nearly finishes her off, but then something bigger arrives to the party. Yup, the predator, whom Naru calls Mupitsi, kills the bear and unwittingly gives Naru a chance to escape. She runs into a search party from her tribe, but Mupitsi slaughters them without a shred of hesitation, and as for Naru, she gets caught in a foothold trap. This is when French voyagers come into the picture. They were all fur trappers and they caged her and Sari. Their translator, Raphael Adelini, questions Naru about the creature, but she refuses to talk. Okay, story time within story time. So you remember the second Predator movie, right? Even if you don't, let us help you. At the end of the movie, the elder Predator gives Danny Glover's Mike Harrigan a flintlock pistol, which has an inscription reading Raphael Adelini, 1715. Now, while the comics have a whole different story about the origin of the pistol, according to Prey, it belonged to this translator, who wasn't a particularly bad guy, but worked for some very ruthless men. Moving on, the leader of the trappers reveals that Tabe is also a prisoner and tortures him. Then, in what can be called the worst case of bad decision-making in the history of all bad decisions, they tie the siblings up as bait. Unsurprisingly, the predator shreds through the French like a hot knife through butter. Tabe and Naru manage to escape though, and Naru also rescues Sari. She finds Raphael dying, and in exchange for medical help, he teaches her how to use his flintlock pistol. Naru gives him orange totsia, which masks his heat signature, but when the predator accidentally steps on him, he screams. And that's the end of this version of Raphael. Tabe rides in on horseback to save Naru, and the two manage to wound Mupitsi, aka the Predator. However, Tabe is killed, and the only silver lining that came from his death was that it gave Naru the opening she needed to regroup. She finds the surviving French captain, knocks him out, and this time around, she uses him as bait. After taking Tatsuya to hide her own heat, she steals the Predator's targeting mask and lures it into a bog. When it fires at her, the guided projectile circles back and impales the hunter instead. With the fight finally over, Naru cuts off the Predator's head, smears its green blood across her face, and returns home. She's no longer just the healer or the little sister, she's the new war chief. She warns her people that they need to move to grounds that can be protected more easily, and the film ends with 3 more Predator ships descending toward the tribe. The hunt might be over for now, but this war's far from done, and that's how Prey also sets up Prey 2. Predator, Hell Come A-Walkin', set in the year 1864. Now, you must be thinking why it is that we're talking about a comic book when you came to watch a recap video before watching Killer of Killers or Predator Badlands. Well, it's simple. The 2-issue Hell Come A-Walkin' is set just a few decades after Prey, the most recent installment in the Predator franchise as of time of recording, and it might have something to do with one of the stories in Killer of Killers. Set during the chaos of the American Civil War, Hell Come A-Walkin' brings a lethal and highly skilled predator right in the middle of a small ongoing skirmish between the Confederate and Union armies. But you see, when 2 opposing parties find a common enemy, they become friends. We pick up in the Ozarks Mountains, and as I said, the year is 1864. Confederate troops were stationed in the mountains and were waiting for a young bushwhacker named Jesse James. Well, he doesn't arrive, a lone predator does, and the next thing you know, blood is spilling all over the place, and skulls and spines are being ripped out of men, both living and dead. Had it been some battlefield thing, there would have been survivors, but this was an unseen, precise massacre, the kind that leaves no survivors and a whole lot of questions. Soon after, outlaw Jesse James arrives with Nebediah and Standing Bear, a Native American warrior. They stumble upon the carnage and don't have much time to process it before they run into a Union platoon hauling a stationary cannon. As one could expect during those days, tensions flared high and quickly. Nebediah fired first and drops Captain Riggs, which sends Lieutenant Hendricks into a spiral filled with guilt. He thinks his salute got Riggs killed and, in a moment of shame, dashes out and catches a bullet to the ear. He wakes up to find himself being patched up by Spartacus, a black Union soldier. There's also Corporal Brubaker, a German soldier with a story of his own who happens to be nicknamed Dutch. If you remember, the character of Arnold in the original Predator movie was also nicknamed Dutch. Anyways, the 3 of them gel with each other over how war dragged them into this mess. Meanwhile, the Confederate soldiers, while licking their wounds, try to make sense of the earlier slaughter. Standing Bear shares a tale about a cannibal spirit that roams the caves of the Ozarks. Nebediah tells his own story about the devil visiting a mountaineer's cabin and tearing the place apart. Jesse was the skeptic of the lot and didn't wish to pay attention to any folklore, so he ignored these stories until he spotted something that shook him and frightened him down to his bones. What he sees is a silhouette, far too tall and too strange to be human. Jesse runs back and convinces the others that they've got bigger problems than each other. He proposes a truce with the Union soldiers. Before the idea can settle, a blast from a plasma caster rips through Standing Bear's chest. This was the threshold for the enemies of the enemy to become friends, and the 2 sides decided to put up a united front against a common threat. I mean, they can decide if they want to abolish slavery later, but first they needed to remain alive. As Jesse, Spartacus, and Neb head into the woods to draw the creature out, the Union soldiers prep the cannon. Nebediah saves Spartacus from a bear, only to lose his own head to the Predator a few moments later. Jesse and Spartacus manage to fight it off for a while and lure it towards the cannon, hoping for a clean kill. The Predator knows better and doesn't fall for it. Hendricks makes the ultimate sacrifice, charges the Predator, and gets blown away by the cannon. Still not enough. The creature keeps coming. Dutch was one of the few who survived at this point, and he wanted to end this thing once and for all. But Jesse manages to sneak behind the Yautja, kills the Predator in the most American way ever. This guy, he drives the Union flag straight through the Predator, and then finishes the job by shooting his pistol into the Predator's already weakened skull. After burying the dead, Jesse's brother Frank shows up with reinforcements and plans to take Dutch and Spartacus prisoner. Jesse turns his gun on his own brother and lets them go instead. As they part ways, Jesse and Spartacus trade a respectful nod. They're still enemies, but not today. Today, they were something else. Predator, Killer of Killers, World War II chapter. Yup, this is where the final chapter of Killer of Killers is set, and it's about a Second World War pilot who takes to the sky to investigate an otherworldly threat to the Allied cause. Next in line is the OG Predator movie. Predator, 1987. Set in the year 1987. In the 1980s, the first Predator movie did something no one expected and gave Hollywood and the world something to remember forever. Of course, we're talking about the original Predator movie and how it pitted Arnold Schwarzenegger against the universe's deadliest and most proficient hunter in a movie that started with blood and bones. The story starts with Major Alan Dutch Schaefer, a hardened ex-Special Forces leader who gets summoned for a rescue mission under the U.S. Army's banner. The task was to retrieve a captured cabinet minister from guerrillas deep inside Guatemala, or so they're told. Dutch lands on the coast of Contamana, where he reconnects with an old friend, Dylan, now a CIA operative. The reunion feels off, and Dutch is clearly not thrilled about having a spy tagging along, but Dutch doesn't back off from a mission and sees that all his objectives are achieved. So they board a chopper, cross the border, and find themselves in the thick, suffocating greens of the jungle. It dawns on Dutch soon enough that things aren't really adding up. They find the wreckage of a downed helicopter that was supposedly carrying the hostages, but there are no survivors. Then they find something worse. It's never a good sight to find the corpses of 3 men flayed alive and strung up in the trees like some kind of maniacal art display. Even for battle-hardened soldiers, it's a stomach-turning discovery. Turns out, those men were part of a previous unit led by one of Dutch's former comrades. Dutch and his team follow the trail to a heavily guarded rebel camp. The firefight is short but loud, complete with explosives, gunfire, and zero subtlety. In all fairness, the sequence was one of the best from the movie. Anyways, the men level the place and capture a female rebel named Anna, but there was a downside to the mission because the supposed hostages were already dead. Making Dutch's initial suspicions real, he learns that they weren't cabinet men at all. In fact, they were all CIA. That's when Dylan's truth comes to light. You see, the entire mission was a lie. He sent Dutch in to mop up a job the previous team couldn't finish. Needless to say, Dutch was furious because he doesn't like CIA games, and as for Dylan, well, no one likes Dylan anymore. With the camp wiped and the real mission over, the team heads for the extraction point, but they're not alone. Something watches them from the trees. Soon, men start to die left, right, and center, but the mysterious killer somehow spares Anna. After the initial bloodshed, the killer dissolves into the colors of the jungle, and all that's left in its wake is a mess of red. After a gunfight, a little while later, they do come across something else too. Strange neon green blood smeared on the leaves. That's the first time we get to see Predator blood, and if it bleeds, Dutch knows it can be killed. As the film progresses, we finally get to see a glimpse of the Predator for the first time. It was an alien with advanced technology, immense strength, and an undying love for trophy collection. After patching itself up from Mac's wild barrage, it begins hunting more methodically. As night falls, the team sets up camp and rigs traps, but it's a boar that triggers the setup, not the Predator. In the chaos, the creature sneaks in and tries to steal Blaine's body. Dutch figures out the thing moves through the trees and their ground booby traps wouldn't do the trick. Dutch suspects Anna knows something and he questions her. She speaks of a creature that shows up during the hottest seasons, one that kills and vanishes without a trace, and this isn't the first summer with strange deaths in the jungle. Mac and Dylan later attempt to flank the Predator, but both meet their end. Mac gets stalked and eliminated in a burst of plasma. Dylan tries to avenge him, only to lose an arm and then his life. As Dutch's crew keeps shrinking, somehow panic turns into clarity, something like a set of rules. So the creature hunts for sport. It targets the armed, ignores the defenseless, and keeps trophies in the form of skulls and spines. Dutch lets Anna go, knowing she's safe and that the thing won't bother with her. Then, Dutch falls into a river, and crawling onto shore, drenched and covered in mud, he unwittingly masks his body heat. The Predator walks right past him. Camouflaged by accident, Dutch realizes the alien's vision depends on heat signatures. Now, he finally has a shot as the playing field just got slightly level. He prepares the old-fashioned way. No guns, no tech. He sharpens sticks, builds traps, and smears himself in mud. He becomes the jungle. When the Predator returns, Dutch begins his assault and first targets the Predator's cloaking device. By now, Dutch's mud has washed off, which means his cover's blown. The two of them get into close quarters combat. Dutch barely survives, but manages to lure the creature into one of his traps. A massive log crashes down and crushes it, but the alien doesn't die quietly. In its final act, the Predator activates a self-destruct device and laughs in Billy's voice as the timer ticks. Dutch runs with his life as the jungle explodes behind him. He survives and he gets picked up by a chopper, battered but alive. Predator might not be McTiernan's most refined film or Schwarzenegger's peak performance, but it locked its place as the franchise's gold standard. What begins like a standard 80s military shoot-'em-up turns into a slow-burn sci-fi horror classic that balances action with dread, and that tension never lets go. More than that, it gives us a hunter that didn't come for war, it came to play a deadly game, and Dutch was among the first humans to win it, barely. Predator 2, 1990, set in the year 1997. This time around, concrete jungles replaced the greens from the first movie. Predator 2 was set in a near dystopian and slightly futuristic 1997. Los Angeles isn't doing great. The heat has boiled over, the streets are war zones, and the cops are caught between Jamaican voodoo gangsters and Colombian drug cartels. But none of them realize there's something else in town. A tourist from space with a habit of skinning people and collecting trophies. Here's when we meet Lieutenant Mike Harrigan, LAPD. He's brash, doesn't care for protocol, and has no patience for bureaucratic nonsense. We first see him charging into a shootout between police and Colombian gang members to rescue wounded officers. He reunites with detectives Leona Cantrell and Danny Arcoletta, both waiting for backup. Harrigan pushes the gang into retreat, but before they can breathe, their hideout explodes. Harrigan leads the team inside and finds what's left of the Colombians. Only mutilated bodies, blood on the ceiling, and not a single survivor, except one who escapes to the rooftop. Harrigan corners him, but ends up shooting him in self-defense. As he stands there, he spots something flickering in the heat. It was a massive, shimmering humanoid. But Harrigan blames it on the sun and his fear of heights. Back at the precinct, Harrigan catches heat from his superiors for going in alone, but that's not the problem. The problem was Special Agent Peter Keyes. You see, this guy heads a federal task force investigating the cartels, or so he says, and makes it clear Harrigan needs to stay in his lane. He also meets Jerry Lambert, a cocky transfer whose mouth rarely stops running. That night, a group of Jamaican gangsters breaks into the penthouse of Colombian drug lord Ramon Vega. They're in the middle of a ritual execution when something crashes the party. The Predator wipes them out, but spares Vega's girlfriend. She was unarmed, and that matters. Harrigan and his team arrive on the scene despite orders to stay out. Inside, they find an elegant mess of death and destruction. From here on, the story gets murkier, and Keyes keeps getting more suspicious. He wants the cops off his case. Harrigan and Danny don't listen. They examine the strange weapon and plan to regroup at Danny's apartment. Before they can meet, the Predator ambushes Danny at the crime scene and kills him, but not before Danny retrieves a Predator weapon jammed into an air conditioning unit. Harrigan gets furious and swears to bring down whatever killed Danny. The investigation leads him to the city's top pathologist, who reveals that the weapon is made of an element that doesn't exist on Earth. That pushes Harrigan deeper down the rabbit hole. He tracks down King Willie, the Jamaican gang boss, who straight up tells him they're dealing with something not of this world. Harrigan leaves, confused and frustrated. Minutes later, the Predator beheads King Willie in an alley and takes the skull. Meanwhile, Leona and Lambert follow new leads to a slaughterhouse tied to the drug gangs. But on the way, they take the subway. Bad call, shouldn't have taken it. Inside the train, the Predator strikes again, and against all odds, the civilians pulled guns, which showed just how much Los Angeles had plunged into darkness. The lights flicker, and the Predator slices through the car like it's on a mission. Lambert fights to the bitter end, but the Predator kills him. Leona, however, gets a pass since she was pregnant. Harrigan arrives too late, but catches up to the creature. He chases it above ground through buildings and streets. Before he gets too close, Keyes' team captures him. They take him to a hidden ops facility and lay out the truth. The government has known about these creatures since the events with Dutch years ago. They've been tracking the Predator in LA and plan to trap it in the slaughterhouse. Keyes explains the plan. His team wears suits that contain their body heat, rendering them invisible to the Predator's thermal vision. They plan to freeze the creature with liquid nitrogen and capture it alive. Spoiler alert, that plan tanks fast. The Predator sees right through it, turns the slaughterhouse into its own hunting ground, and tears through the squad. Harrigan breaks free, grabs some gear, and confronts the Predator himself. The fight goes to the rooftops, with Harrigan managing to wound the alien using one of its own blades. The stunt work here deserves a special mention because R. David Smith, a one-armed stuntman, performs a rooftop drop from 13 stories using a specialized rig called the Descender. He had one shot to land it right, or he'd fall straight into someone's bathroom, and he pulled it off just perfectly. After the rooftop, the Predator retreats into a nearby apartment. We see it get its Medicomp, which is basically a Yautja first aid kit straight from hell. It melts a blue solvent, grabs a spatula, needles, and an emergency mask, and extracts shrapnel while groaning through the pain. The chase then leads into the sewers, where Harrigan stumbles onto the Predator's mothership. Inside, trophies line the walls. There were skulls of humans and creatures alike, including one that looked suspiciously like a xenomorph. The Predator re-engages, and this time Harrigan fights with everything he's got. He eventually stabs the alien with its own disc blade, thereby killing it. But the real shocker comes as Harrigan catches his breath. You see, several other predators decloak around him. Harrigan loses his shit, but they don't attack. Instead, the elder predator approaches and hands Harrigan an old flintlock pistol marked with the year 1715, which was a trophy from a past hunt. It's a silent gesture of respect. Harrigan lived. He earned it. So, according to the comics, this elder predator named Greyback came to Earth in the year 1718 and helped an honorable pirate named Raphael Adelini, whose crew turned on him after Adelini refused to plunder a church ship. Greyback and Raphael were to duke it out after taking care of the rogue pirates, but Adelini gets killed, and with his dying breath, he offers the pistol to Greyback, saying the words, "Take it," which is what Greyback tells Harrigan before the film ends. Alien vs. Predator, 2004, set in the year 2004. Beneath the icy wastes of Antarctica, the Razorback Point whaling station sat on top of something way older and far more dangerous than anyone expected. It was a Yautja hunting ground buried 2,000 feet under. Charles Bishop Wayland, head of the Wayland Corporation, discovered this pyramid hidden beneath the ice and saw it as the next big claim for his company. Naturally, he threw together a team of mercenaries, scientists, archaeologists, drillers, and Lex Woods, a survival guide who would end up with a very different job description. While the team prepped to dig, a Predator ship entered Earth's orbit and fired an energy beam into the ice. It carved a perfect tunnel straight down to the pyramid. Wayland's crew arrived at the site confused by the sudden shortcut. The tunnel wasn't there the day before, but hey, less work for the drillers, right? They descended into the pyramid, finding a place that looked more like a sacrificial altar than a temple, lined with human skeletons, all with their rib cages burst open. That's never a good sign. Unbeknownst to them, the pyramid was built as a hunting arena. 3 Yautjas, Scar, Celtic, and Chopper, arrived to earn their blooded status by hunting xenomorphs. But the humans triggered the pyramid's mechanism, which thawed out a frozen xenomorph queen. Once free, she got to work, laying eggs at speed. The facehuggers didn't waste time either and latched onto humans before planting chestbursters. Those in turn grew into full-sized xenomorphs, and then it turned into a 3-way mess. Predators versus aliens versus humans. It didn't go well for anyone. With their weapons missing, the Yautjas went hunting. Chopper moved in on Lex, ready to strike, but Grid, the xenomorph drone, leapt in and impaled him. Celtic, furious, charged Grid. Their brawl was long, brutal, and ended with Grid breaking free from Celtic's net gun and finishing him off. Meanwhile, Wayland tried to buy time for Lex and archaeologist Sebastian by confronting Scar. He didn't last long. Scar killed a facehugger and a drone, then removed his helmet and marked his forehead with acidic xenomorph blood, a rite of passage. But before he could recover, another facehugger jumped him. It got the job done. Scar caught up with Lex later. She returned his weapon and the two teamed up. Their alliance worked. Scar even fashioned a makeshift spear and shield for Lex out of dead xenomorph parts. Together, they took on the xenomorph queen, chained her down, and shoved her off a cliff into the freezing water. Scar, however, died from his injuries shortly after. A Yautja mothership appears to collect his body. The other predators gave Lex a respectful nod and left her behind, but before anyone could breathe easy, Scar's corpse on the ship erupted, and out came a Predalien chestburster. That thing later found its way to Gunnison, Colorado, and brought a whole new wave of chaos. AVP isn't the cleanest entry in the franchise. The idea works, but the execution feels rushed. Most of the cast gets wiped out early, the story gets muddled, and the predators don't get the treatment they deserve. But it did give us the Predalien, and for fans of lore, that's a win worth keeping. Aliens vs. Predator Recqueen, 2007, set in the year 2004. After Alien vs. Predator wrapped up with Scar's corpse being honored on the Yautja ship, things went downhill fast. A chestburster clawed out of his body, but this wasn't any regular Xeno. It was the first full-blown Predalien we ever saw on screen. It tore through the scout ship that had been docked with the mothership, molted at high speed, and turned into a full-sized Predator-Xenomorph hybrid. But then, it started wiping out the crew. Before the slaughter went full tilt, one of the predators on board, Bull, managed to send a distress signal. The call reached Wolf, an experienced solo predator, who immediately suited up and set course for Earth. His mission? Erase the evidence, kill the hybrid, contain the mess. The ship didn't make a smooth landing, however. It crashed into Gunnison, Colorado, a quiet town that had no idea it was about to become ground zero for an interspecies war. The Predalien escaped the wreckage, along with a batch of facehuggers, and the infestation began. The first victims were a father and son out on a hunting trip. The facehuggers wasted no time implanting embryos. Then, they moved to the sewers and infected more unsuspecting people. Wolf arrived and got to work real fast. His job wasn't just extermination, it was cleanup. He needed to remove every trace of Predator tech and Xeno presence. He melted bodies and gear with a blue dissolving compound and blew up the scout ship. No room for evidence. He set up net traps to catch the facehuggers, but the Pred alien ambushed him. The attack knocked off Wolf's aim and triggered a blast that brought part of the sewer system down and punched a hole into the streets above. The chaos gave the Xenos a chance to flee topside, but Wolf didn't waste time. He punched through the debris and kept chasing. He tracked a xenomorph to a power plant where his plasmacaster failed due to electromagnetic interference. That misfire shut down the power grid for the whole city, drawing attention from the authorities. Wolf kept pushing forward and managed to kill 5 Xenos despite the blackout, but his gear took a hit. He salvaged what he could, combined 2 plasmacasters, and made himself a makeshift handheld plasma pistol. Soon, he followed the trail to a hospital, where the xenomorphs had begun building a hive. On the hospital rooftop, Wolf finally faced the Earth Pred alien. Most of his gear was gone or busted. He took off the rest, including his biohelmet, and went in barehanded. He tore out the Pred alien's inner jaw and drove his wrist blades through its skull, but the hybrid didn't go quietly. It rammed its tail straight through Wolf's body, leaving them both locked in a brutal stalemate. Then came the final blow from the sky. The US government had tracked the escalating carnage and sent in an F-22 Raptor carrying a tactical nuke. It vaporized the hospital, the Xenos, the Pred alien, and Wolf in one clean detonation. Afterwards, Colonel Stevens recovered Wolf's hybrid plasmacaster and handed it over to Miss Yutani, hinting at a future where human tech and Predator weaponry might blend. For now, the town was gone, and the secret buried, at least for a while. Recqueen doesn't win any awards for subtlety. The lighting was dim, the characters vanished too quickly, and the human plot gets swallowed by the alien one. But the Earth Pred alien concept had real weight. A creature born from the best hunters in 2 galaxies deserved more room to breathe. Instead, we got a messy, rushed entry that feels more like a missed shot than a clean kill.
Oh shit.
Predators 2010. Set in the year 2010. Royce, a former US Special Ops soldier turned mercenary, woke mid-air in freefall. Needless to say, the dude was shocked and scared to death because he was dropping down into unknown territory without a shred of context or warning. He parachuted into an unfamiliar jungle. On the ground, he met others who had landed the same way. Most were killers. Isabel, an Israeli sniper, Nikolai, a Spetsnaz commando, Cuchillo, a cartel enforcer, Mombasa, a death squad soldier, Hanzo, a Yakuza hitman, Stans, a death row inmate, Roland Noland, an old US soldier who had somehow survived on the planet for years, and then there was Edwin, a quiet, twitchy doctor whose presence here amidst these trained killers felt completely out of place. The group followed Royce, who quickly established himself as the closest thing to a leader. They moved through the jungle and discovered an alien structure with strange plants. Edwin took a sample and pointed out the plant's neurotoxic properties. They also found cages and traps left behind by a long-dead Green Beret, another victim of this bizarre hunting ground. It wasn't long before the jungle struck back. Hellhounds, creatures with reptilian builds and armored hides, charged in. They weren't there to kill anyone though. They flushed prey out, wounded them, and made them easier targets. Tracker Predator, their handler, picked off Mombasa during the assault. The team realized something was wrong. Well, it was quite wrong since they weren't even on Earth. Royce guessed right when he figured that they'd been dropped into a game preserve, not for animals, but for people. Soon after, Cuchillo vanishes. His voice called out, begging for help, but the team knew better. When they found his body posed like bait, it confirmed that they were being hunted. They pushed deeper and discovered a predator strung up like a prisoner. Not long after, the attackers came, 3 super predators. They were Tracker, whom we already introduced, the second was the Falconer, and the third was their leader, Berserker, who's probably the worst and deadliest of the predators they've shown in film. Isabel recognized them. She had read classified reports about a similar creature in Guatemala back in 1987. Oh, and this was the only canon reference the film followed. The team stumbled onto Noland, who had survived 10 hunting cycles. He'd adapted by hiding, scavenging, and letting others die. He explained that the predators ran this planet as a proving ground. They pulled in warriors from across galaxies to refine their hunting skills. The captive predator, Nolan said, belonged to a different clan than the super predators. There was a blood feud between them. Just so you know, the captive predator belonged to the Jungle Hunter clan, the same clan as the original Jungle Hunter predator. Royce proposed freeing the captive predator in the hopes that it would help them escape. Noland had other plans. Isolation had unhinged him, and he tried to kill the group by suffocating them, hoping to steal their weapons and stay hidden. Tracker ended the threat by blasting Noland and letting the group escape. More people died, and soon, the only ones left were Royce, Isabel, and Edwin. Royce freed the captive Predator. In exchange, it activated its ship and set a course for Earth, but Berserker wasn't finished. He arrived and killed the captive Predator, then destroyed the ship. Then, Edwin the Doctor reveals his dark side. He was a serial killer back on Earth. He paralyzed Isabel, but she stabbed him with his own poisoned scalpel. Royce used Edwin's body as bait, rigged him with explosives, and lured the Berserker in. Isabel opened fire, and Royce took off the creature's head. The hunt ended. Royce and Isabel stood in silence as more parachutes dropped from the sky. Fresh game for the next hunt. Also, just FYI, the story of Royce and Isabel continues in the comics if you want to know what happens to them. We suggest you take a look at our video titled Untold Story after Predator's 2010 film that gives us warriors from various eras fighting Yautja. The Predator, 2018. Set in the year 2018. The story starts with a Predator ship in space, but it's not alone. You see, a larger Predator mothership starts firing at it mid-flight, so the smaller ship, piloted by the so-called fugitive Predator, zips through a wormhole and ends up crashing in the jungles of Mexico. A squad of U.S. Army Rangers, led by sniper Quinn McKenna, happens to be nearby on a hostage rescue mission. The fugitive Predator ejects himself in a pod before the ship explodes. He lurks in the trees in camouflage and picks off one of McKenna's team. McKenna fights back. In fact, he uses the Predator's own wrist gauntlet against it. He knocks the alien down, grabs the gauntlet and helmet, and mails them home. Let's not get into the why of it. Needless to say, McKenna gets picked up by government agent Will Traeger and is taken for interrogation. Meanwhile, Traeger's team retrieves the injured Predator and hauls it off to a lab for a bit of poking and prodding, but they fail to control the fugitive, and he ends up doing what Predators do best. Elsewhere, McKenna finds himself packed into a military bus full of other outcasts, including former Marine Nebraska Williams. The Predator's escape gives McKenna the opportunity to go after the gear he had mailed home. Too bad his son, Rory, who is autistic and has a gift for patterns, has already opened the package and gone trick-or-treating in the Predator armor. The group races to find him and barely manages to fend off a pair of Predator hounds before being cornered by the fugitive Predator at a local school. They hand over the gear, but then all hell breaks loose. A larger, genetically upgraded Yautja arrives, the so-called Ultimate Predator. He is basically the result of alien DNA spliced into the Yautja genome, designed to be stronger, faster, and more brutal. He is here to eliminate the fugitive Predator, and he does so quickly by smashing his skull and ripping out his spine. The group regroups with help from a reprogrammed Predator hound and heads out to stop him. The Ultimate Predator reveals that he plans to hunt them and considers Rory's autism an evolutionary advantage. He wants to take the boy off-world. Nebraska sacrifices himself to stall the ship. Eventually, the team kills the Ultimate Predator with his own weapons. In the aftermath, it's revealed the fugitive had come to Earth not to hunt, but to deliver a weapon, the Predator Killer, so that humanity might stand a fighting chance the next time a Yautja comes calling. So, that's all of the movies in the Predator franchise, but you know what? There's another one yet in the pipeline, and it's called Predator Badlands, 2025. Set in the distant future, Dan Trachtenberg will be back with yet another Predator movie later this year, and if the hype is to be believed, it will do as good as Prey did. Part of the reason is because of how different Badlands and its protagonist look when compared to the rest of the franchise. And if you asked us, we think it's a good thing. Badlands isn't a sequel to Prey, nor is it connected to any existing arc. It's a standalone movie that's set a few centuries ahead and introduces a new Predator unlike anything we've ever seen. Elle Fanning stars in the movie, and it looks like she'll play a Weyland-Yutani android, not a human. So, who's the lead if the only confirmed human character is actually an android? Well, it's actually going to be a young Yautja on his first hunt, trying to earn his place in the hierarchy, and he'll be played by Demetrius Kolo-Matangi. And that brings us to the look. This new Predator still has the usual Predator body parts like the mandibles and the dreadlocks, but the resemblance to previous incarnations stops there. He's leaner, less armored, and far more human in appearance. His skull structure is underdeveloped, and his overall build lacks the bulk we've come to associate with these hunters. Unlike the beast from Prey, who roamed with primitive tools, This one comes equipped with more gear, though it's clearly less advanced than what veteran Predators usually wear. His face is more visible, with wider eye sockets and fewer physical extremes. Even his dreadlocks are trimmed back and pinned, exposing more of his features. Trachtenberg's decision to soften the design helps shift audience perception. The film wants viewers to connect with this young hunter, not fear him. For the first time in the franchise, the Predator will appear as the protagonist. Not a reluctant ally, not an anti-hero, an actual lead character with stakes, flaws, and something to prove. This basic premise is still under wraps, but what's clear is that this Predator isn't after helpless prey. He's tracking something formidable, something that will test him and decide his worth. Some aren't happy with this new vision. After all, part of the appeal has always been the threat, the hulking masked hunter as an apex killer. But if Prey proved anything, it's that the franchise thrives when it takes risks. Predator Badlands leans into that gamble, and if Trachtenberg lands it again, this new Youngblood might be the key to evolving the series without losing its bite. Predator Badlands hits US theaters on November 7th, 2025, but unfortunately, that's the last movie on our list. If you enjoyed our content, don't forget to leave a like and subscribe to us if you haven't already. Otherwise, thanks for watching, stay safe out there, and have a marvelous day.